You're most likely familiar with the 10 Commandments in the Bible, stuff we all generally take as good advice. Don't murder, don't steal, honor your parents, the list goes on.
And those are just the first 10. There are actually a total of 613 commands, all given to ancient Israel, found in the first 5 books of the Bible, which in Hebrew are called the Torah.
Now the word Torah is usually translated in English as the law, because it has all these laws in it. And as you read them, you wonder, am I supposed to obey some of these? All of these? What is the purpose of the law?
Well, that translation is kind of confusing because while the Torah has laws in it, the book itself is fundamentally a story about how God has created new kinds of people who are fully able to love God and love others. And when Jesus taught about the Torah, he said he was bringing that story to its fulfillment.
So walk me through the story and how it's fulfilled.
So the story begins with God creating humanity who rebels. And God chooses Abraham to bless all the nations through his family, who end up in slavery in Egypt, so God rescues them. And in Mount Sinai, God makes a covenant with Israel, like an agreement. And all the laws that Moses gives to Israel are on the terms of that agreement. They're like a constitution. Some of the laws are about rituals and customs that set Israel apart from the nations. Others were about social justice or morality. By following these, Israel would show the other nations what God is like.
So the rest of the Torah is the complete list of laws that Moses gave to Israel?
Well, no. The rest of the Torah just continues the story. And the 613 commands are only a selection from that original constitution. And even these have been broken up and placed at strategic points within the story. Now pay attention because you'll see a real clear pattern. Moses gives the first laws to Israel.
Don't worship other gods, don't make idols.
Then right after that, there's a story of Israel breaking those very laws.
They worship the golden calf.
So Moses gives more laws, and then you get more stories of rebellion. Some more laws, rebellion again. Some more laws, more rebellion, and you start to see the point.
Right. No matter how many laws, they're just going to continue to rebel.
So at the conclusion of the Torah story, Moses gives a final speech to Israel as they prepare to go into their new home, and he tells them, you guys, I know that you are not going to follow all God's laws. You've proven to me that you're incapable. Moses says that the problem is that their hearts are hard, and they're gonna need new transformed hearts if they're ever gonna truly follow God's law. And he was right. The story goes on to recount Israel's total failure.
They go into the land, they break all the laws.
Right. Now the next section of books in Jewish tradition are the 15 books of the prophets. They reflect back on the story. For example, Ezekiel said that if Israel was going to obey the law, God's Spirit would have to transform their hard hearts into soft hearts. And Jeremiah said that's when obedience to God's commands wouldn't feel like a duty, but would be written deep in their hearts. And Isaiah, he promised a future leader, Israel's Messiah, who would lead all the people in obedience to the law. Now, in Jewish tradition, all these books are called the prophets, even the historical books, because they are continuing the story told from the perspective of the prophets.
Okay, so we have the law and prophets, and they're telling this one connected story about God's desire to bless the whole world through a people, Israel, who it turns out needs a new heart.
Yes, and Jesus saw himself as continuing that story. He agreed with the law and the prophets when he taught that out of the human heart come the most ugly parts of human nature. It's like the default setting of our hearts is opposed to God's law. But Jesus also said he came to solve that problem, and in his own words, to fulfill the law.
What does he mean there, to fulfill the law?
Well, first he said the demand of all the laws in the Torah could be fulfilled by what he called the Great Command, that we are to love God and to love others.
So that seems pretty easy. I mean, we all want to love.
Well, we think we want to love, but Jesus showed how love is far more demanding than we realize. He quotes the laws, do not murder, and he says not killing someone is a loving thing to do. But then he also says that when you treat someone with disrespect or nurse resentment against them, you're also violating God's moral ideal because you are not treating them with love. And so Jesus said true love ought to extend even to our own enemies. So even though this command seems very simple, Jesus showed how our hearts are not currently equipped to fulfill even this basic command of God to love others.
That's kind of a downer.
But where Israel failed, Jesus brought the story to its fulfillment. As Israel's Messiah, he fully loved God and others, and he showed all the nations what God is truly like. He did this through the acts of compassion and mercy, and ultimately by loving his enemies even unto death. And after his resurrection, he told his followers that he would send God's Spirit to transform their hearts so that they could follow him and fulfill the purpose of the law, to love God and to love their neighbor. So this fulfills the story of the law and the prophets. Or in the words of the Apostle Paul, the one who loves fulfills the law. Our mission at Streetlights is to help people understand the Bible for themselves. We're able to give away for free everything we make because of generous people like you all around the world. You can see all of our resources, our Streetlights Audio Bible, these videos, and more at streetlightsbible.com.